Every morning when you stand before the mirror, it reflects back exactly what is before it. No distortion, no judgment, only truth. But what if I told you that life itself is a mirror? That the universe you live in faithfully reflects the world you carry within your mind? Our outer experiences are not accidents, nor random strokes of fate. They are reflections of the assumptions we hold deep within ourselves. The world is a stage, yes, but the script comes from the silent conversations and beliefs playing within us. Your inner world creates the outer world. Life is a mirror reflecting the thoughts, assumptions, and images you consistently hold in mind. When you pause and look around at your circumstances, it may feel like they are independent of you, as though life is happening to you. But if you observe carefully, you will see a deep connection between the way you think, the way you feel, and the experiences that unfold before you. The mind does not merely observe reality, it actively shapes it. Every person, situation, and condition you encounter acts like a reflection of your inner state, showing you what you have assumed to be true about yourself and the world. Think of a physical mirror. If you frown into it, you will never see a smile looking back at you. If you stand slouched, the mirror will not show a tall and confident figure. It reflects, without compromise, what is placed before it. Life operates in the same way. It does not give you what you demand with empty words. It gives you what you imagine, assume, and accept as part of yourself. The conversations you carry within your mind, the pictures you sacredly rehearse, and the emotions you habitually entertain are the raw material from which the universe constructs your experience. The invisible always precedes the visible. Before a building rises, there is first an architect's plan. Before a book is written, there is an idea formed in the author's mind. Before an invention changes the world, it is imagined in the privacy of thought. Likewise, before your life circumstances appear, they exist as images, feelings, and assumptions within you. The problem is that most people are unaware of the power of these inner impressions. They believe their worries are harmless, their daydreams are insignificant, or their self-criticism is private. Yet life is faithful, it reflects those inner tendencies back as external events, often leaving people puzzled, asking, "Why did this happen to me?" without realizing they were rehearsing the experience long before it arrived. If you consistently imagine yourself struggling, life will mirror struggle. If you walk around with the assumption that people are unkind, you will encounter unkindness. If you hold on to images of rejection, rejection will come. This is not punishment, it is simply the law of reflection. Just as the mirror does not decide what to show you, life does not choose what to manifest for you. It reflects back what you hold in mind with persistence and emotion. When you shift the images and assumptions within, the outer world must shift as well. Imagine carrying within you the picture of being loved, respected, and successful. Even before the evidence shows up, you feel the confidence, the warmth, the assurance of that inner picture. That feeling then seeps into your actions, your voice, your posture. People respond to you differently without even knowing why. Opportunities align with the vibration you are radiating. Slowly, the outer world rearranges itself to confirm the new inner world you are sustaining. The mirror cannot resist, it must reflect what it is given. Consider how powerful this makes you. You may not control the actions of others or the unfolding of events, but you do control the assumptions you nurture and the mental pictures you accept. This inner control is far greater than the illusion of outer control. By tending to the garden of your mind, by pulling out the weeds of doubt and planting seeds of faith, you influence the entire landscape of your life. The reflection may not change instantly, but as surely as morning follows night, it must eventually match the new pattern you carry within. Even your self-image is mirrored back to you. If inwardly you see yourself as inadequate, people will unconsciously confirm it through the way they treat you. If you secretly believe you are worthy and capable, life will present situations that affirm that belief. This is why affirmations, visualization, and inner dialogue are so potent. They are not mere words or fantasies, they are instructions you are giving to the mirror of life. With repetition and feeling, these instructions become assumptions, and assumptions solidify into facts. The key is consistency. A passing thought may not carry much weight, but an assumption held day after day becomes a seed that must sprout. Just as a mirror will not lie to you, life will not betray the nature of your inner state. If you want a different reflection, you do not scold the mirror or blame the glass, you adjust yourself. You lift your head, you change your expression, you stand differently, and instantly the reflection responds. So it is with life. Alter your inner stance, and the reflection of circumstances must follow. This truth can be both liberating and confronting. It is liberating because it means you are never a victim of chance. You can always create change by changing what you consistently hold in your mind. But it is confronting because it forces you to take responsibility for your inner state. Complaining about circumstances is as pointless as complaining that the mirror shows a tired face after you've neglected your rest. The mirror cannot change until you do. When you begin to treat your inner world as the seedbed of reality, you start to live with greater awareness. You monitor your self-talk, replacing criticism with encouragement. You direct your imagination toward the outcomes you desire rather than the fears you dread. You choose assumptions that uplift you rather than diminish you. Over time, this inner discipline becomes second nature, and the reflection of life becomes more harmonious, abundant, and aligned with your deepest desires. Your inner world creates the outer world because the two are not separate. They are one continuous loop of cause and effect, thought and reflection, seed and harvest. The mirror of life has no power of its own. It obediently returns to you what you have given it in secret moments of thought and feeling. Imagination is the true reality. The world you see outside is secondary. The real creative power lies in what you vividly imagine and accept as true. Most people grow up believing that what they see, touch, and measure is all there is, that the tangible outer world defines what is real. Yet the greatest discoveries, the most profound creations, and the deepest personal transformations all begin not in the outer world, but in the unseen landscape of imagination. Imagination is the soil of reality, the workshop where the invisible becomes visible, and the rehearsal hall where tomorrow's experiences are scripted before they arrive. Think of every man-made object you encounter, the chair you sit on, the phone you hold, the buildings you pass by, even the music you hear. None of these existed first in the physical world. They existed first in the mind of someone who dared to imagine them. The architect imagined the structure. The composer imagined the melody. The inventor imagined the machine. What you now call real was once a fantasy, an idea, a picture that existed only in someone's imagination. The outside world simply followed the blueprint laid down within. This same principle governs your personal life. What you accept as true in imagination determines what you eventually encounter in reality. If you continually imagine yourself as unlucky, unwanted, or powerless, the world will mirror that assumption and present you with situations that reinforce it. But if you dare to imagine yourself successful, loved, and capable, and if you sustain that picture with feeling, then life must bend to match it. The outer world is not the cause but the effect, not the master but the servant, faithfully reflecting the inner image you have chosen. Imagination does not mean idle daydreaming that fades away like smoke. True imagination is vivid, alive, and felt as though it were happening now. When you imagine with intensity and emotion, your mind begins to accept the scene as reality. The subconscious, which directs much of your behavior and attracts corresponding conditions, cannot tell the difference between what is vividly imagined and what is physically experienced. By consistently impressing it with images of your desired reality, you instruct it to create conditions that match those images. History is filled with stories of people who relied on imagination long before outer evidence appeared. Thomas Edison held the picture of a glowing light bulb long before the filament was perfected. The Wright brothers imagined flying while the world laughed at the impossibility of heavier than air machines. Countless artists have spoken of seeing the finished work in their mind's eye, before a single brushstroke was laid on canvas. They lived more fully in imagination than in the opinions of others or the doubts of the present, and eventually imagination hardened into fact. You too are exercising imagination every day, though often unconsciously. Worries are imagination misused. They are negative scenes rehearsed until they feel inevitable. Self-doubt is imagination directed against yourself, picturing failure where success could be. When you play out arguments in your mind, when you see yourself rejected before you even try, when you replay past mistakes and give them new life, you are creating realities in imagination that often find their way into your outer world. The tragedy is not that imagination is weak, but that it is used carelessly, producing results you do not desire. To harness imagination consciously, you must first realize its supremacy over outer circumstances. The fact that something has not yet appeared in the physical world does not mean it is impossible. Outer reality is always playing catch up to inner vision. When you vividly imagine a scene of fulfillment, seeing yourself living the life you desire, hearing the words you long to hear, feeling the emotions as though it is happening now, you are sowing seeds in the only place that truly matters. With persistence, those seeds grow into the circumstances that match them. The process is not about forcing the outer world, but about relaxing into the inner world with conviction. You do not need to know how your imagination will manifest. You only need to sustain the vision. Just as a seed planted in soil knows how to draw nutrients and grow without your constant supervision, the seed planted in imagination contains within it the intelligence to unfold. Your task is to water it with attention and protect it from the weeds of doubt, fear, and contradiction. This is why many spiritual and philosophical traditions emphasize the power of vision, inner speech, and belief. What you accept in imagination sets the tone for your entire being. It shapes your attitude, influences your behavior, and radiates into your environment in subtle ways that attract the right people and events. If you imagine abundance, you carry yourself differently and opportunities notice you. If you imagine love, your presence changes and people respond in kind. If you imagine health, your body begins to follow the command of your mind. The world you see outside is always lagging behind the world you are imagining. This is why it is futile to argue with appearances. If you do not like what you see, the answer is not to fight the outer world, but to change the inner image. Complaining about circumstances is like yelling at a movie screen. The film being projected has already been loaded, and the only way to change it is to replace the real. Imagination is that real. What you vividly imagine and accept as true is the new film that will eventually project itself on the screen of life. Imagination is the true reality because it holds the power of cause. The outer world is nothing but effect. By honoring imagination as the creative force and by consciously choosing what pictures you sustain, you gain mastery over the direction of your life. You realize that what you call reality is not fixed but fluid, responding to the inner state you nurture with persistence and feeling. Assumption precedes manifestation. What you assume about yourself and others inevitably shapes the experiences that unfold in your life. Most people believe that life is a series of random events, that luck or fate plays the greatest role in what they experience. But beneath the surface of appearances lies a principle as certain as gravity. The assumptions you hold in your inner world set the stage for everything you encounter in the outer world. These assumptions are not idle thoughts you occasionally entertain, but deep-seated beliefs, convictions, and inner stances that silently govern the flow of your life. When you assume something about yourself, you carry it like a hidden script that directs your actions, influences your perceptions, and even colors how others respond to you. If you assume you are unworthy of success, you may unconsciously sabotage opportunities, misinterpret gestures of kindness, or attract situations that confirm your sense of inadequacy. On the other hand, if you assume you are capable, deserving, and destined to rise, the world begins to arrange itself in surprising ways to confirm that inner conviction. Life is the faithful mirror of assumption. The power of assumption lies in its ability to bypass logic. You may reason that a certain dream is unrealistic or that change is too difficult. But if you assume it is already true in some way, your subconscious mind accepts it and begins to create conditions that make it possible. Assumptions do not wait for evidence, they generate the evidence. They move ahead of facts, shaping them into alignment with the inner picture you have embraced. That is why people who carry unshakable self-belief often succeed even when circumstances are against them. They assume success, and reality has no choice but to follow. Consider how assumption operates in relationships. If you assume someone dislikes you, you will approach them defensively, interpret their words negatively, and likely provoke the very rejection you fear. But if you assume they respect and value you, your tone, posture, and energy shift accordingly, and you often receive warmth and openness in return. The other person may not even be aware of why they respond differently, but your assumption has silently influenced the interaction. Assumptions act like invisible threads, pulling people and events into alignment with what you have already accepted as true. The outer world does not come first. Assumption comes first, manifestation comes second. To live as though you must wait for circumstances to change before you adjust your beliefs is to reverse the order of creation. If you assume you are poor until the bank account changes, you will remain poor. If you assume you are unloved until someone proves otherwise, loneliness will persist. If you assume failure until success is undeniable, failure will be your constant companion. The key is to assume the new state before there is evidence, to embody it in thought and feeling so completely that the world is compelled to reflect it. This is not self-deception, it is self-creation. The truth is that every version of yourself already exists in potential. Which version becomes visible depends on what you assume. If you assume you are strong, the strong version emerges. If you assume you are weak, the weak version takes the stage. If you assume the world is hostile, you will encounter hostility. If you assume it is supportive, you will meet support. Assumption selects the channel of experience, tuning you into the reality that corresponds to your inner conviction. Look at how habits form. When you assume you are the kind of person who exercises daily, you begin to act in accordance with that assumption, and soon the body reflects health and vitality. When you assume you are undisciplined, you allow excuses to rule, and the evidence of disorder multiplies. It is never the action alone, but the assumption that generates and sustains the action. The moment the assumption shifts, the behavior and its results shift naturally. Even so-called limitations are nothing more than hardened assumptions. A person may say, "I am just not good with money," or "I always attract the wrong people," or "opportunities never come my way." These are not facts but assumptions disguised as identity, and life mirrors them faithfully until they are replaced. By assuming something new, "I am wise with money," "I am worthy of healthy love," "I live in a field of opportunity," you plant the seed of transformation. At first it may feel unnatural, even false, but with repetition and feeling, the subconscious accepts the new assumption and manifestation follows. The process is subtle yet powerful. The world will not change instantly, but it will begin to rearrange itself, often in ways that seem coincidental. You might overhear a conversation that sparks an idea, meet someone who offers guidance, or feel an unexpected surge of confidence that shifts your decisions. These are not accidents, but the natural unfolding of your assumption into manifestation. The outer world is fluid, bending to accommodate the reality you have chosen inwardly. This principle also applies collectively. Entire societies are shaped by their shared assumptions. If a group assumes scarcity, policies and behaviors emerge that produce scarcity. If they assume abundance, innovations and systems arise that produce abundance. History repeatedly shows that progress begins not with evidence, but with a shift in collective assumption about what is possible. To consciously use this law, you must begin by identifying the assumptions you carry unconsciously. Listen to your self-talk, observe your expectations, notice how you interpret events. Are these shaped by assumptions of limitation or of possibility? Once you recognize them, you have the power to replace them. By deliberately assuming the state you desire, health, love, success, freedom, you send out a new command to the universe. You embody the outcome before it arrives, and in time the manifestation must catch up. Assumption precedes manifestation because assumption is the seed from which all experience grows. The world you see around you is the harvest of yesterday's assumptions, and the world you will encounter tomorrow is already being formed by the assumptions you hold today. Feeling is the secret emotion energizes imagination. The feeling of already being or having something is what impresses it onto reality. Many people imagine with great detail, but their imagination remains dry, lifeless, like a sketch without color. It is not the mere image that carries power, but the emotional current attached to it. Feeling is the language of the subconscious mind, and the subconscious is the gateway through which imagination enters reality. Without feeling, imagination is a shadow. With feeling, it becomes a living force that molds circumstances and shapes experiences. Consider the difference between casually thinking of wealth and truly feeling wealthy. To think of wealth is to remain a spectator, distant from the state itself. But when you feel wealth, when you allow yourself to embody the emotion of abundance, gratitude, and ease, you fuse your imagination with conviction. This union of thought and feeling creates an impression on the subconscious, and the subconscious responds by guiding your behavior, shaping your perceptions, and aligning external events to confirm that inner state. It is not the desire alone that manifests, but the emotional acceptance of its fulfillment. Every strong memory you hold carries with it a feeling. You remember not just what happened, but how it felt. The mind records experience through emotion, and the subconscious replays those emotional imprints as repeated patterns in life. This is why trauma lingers, not because of the event itself, but because of the emotional energy attached to it. By the same law, joy, love, and gratitude can become powerful seeds for creation when deliberately cultivated. Feeling is the magnet that draws imagination into the world of fact. When you imagine a scene of success or fulfillment, do not keep it at arm's length as something to be hoped for in the future. Instead, step into it, live inside it, and ask yourself, how would it feel if this were true right now? The answer to that question is the key. If it feels liberating, if it feels joyful, if it feels peaceful, then dwell in that feeling as long as you can. The subconscious cannot resist such impressions. It accepts them as reality and begins to orchestrate your outer world to match the inner atmosphere you have created. Emotion is creative energy in motion. A picture of health without feeling health is powerless, But if you feel the vitality, the ease of movement, the confidence of wellness, the body begins to respond. A vision of love without feeling loved is empty. But if you generate the warmth, safety, and delight of already being cherished, people and circumstances appear that reflect that inner state. The law is exact. What you feel as true inwardly hardens into fact outwardly. Many struggle because they cling to desire without crossing over into fulfillment. They continually say, I want, I hope, I wish, and in doing so, they keep the feeling of lack alive. The subconscious does not respond to the words, it responds to the state of feeling. Wanting implies absence, and so absence is mirrored back. Fulfillment implies presence, and so presence is mirrored back. The secret is to feel as though the desire is already accomplished, to dwell in the emotional atmosphere of is done, and from that place reality must conform. Notice how quickly feelings influence behavior. If you wake up feeling confident, the day unfolds differently than if you wake up feeling defeated. The same opportunities may exist in both scenarios, but your perception, decisions, and responses change depending on your emotional state. Feeling acts as the director of your life, guiding where attention goes and how action follows. This is why generating the feeling of fulfillment is so crucial. It not only impresses the subconscious, but also colors your conscious behavior, making you naturally align with the desired reality. The great challenge is persistence. Feelings often shift moment by moment, influenced by appearances. You may feel abundant while imagining, then slip back into doubt when you look at your bank account. You may feel loved while visualizing, then fall into loneliness when circumstances contradict it. The task is to remain faithful to the inner feeling regardless of outer evidence. The outer world is slow to catch up, but the feeling held consistently within must eventually break through as fact. Feeling is also contagious. When you embody the feeling of success, people sense it without explanation. They are drawn to your confidence and respond to you in ways that create opportunities. When you embody the feeling of love, you radiate warmth and others mirror it back. This is not mystical but natural. People react to the emotional states you project, often without knowing why. Thus, by mastering your inner feelings, you influence not only your private world but also your interactions with others. Gratitude is one of the most powerful feelings because it combines joy, appreciation, and fulfillment. To feel grateful for what you desire as though it is already yours is to place yourself directly in the state of having. Gratitude closes the gap between imagination and reality, convincing the subconscious that the desire is complete. From that state, life arranges itself to match the feeling, and what was once imagined begins to take tangible form. This principle reveals why mere affirmations without feeling often fail. You can repeat, I am successful, 100 times, but if underneath you feel failure, the subconscious accepts the feeling and disregards the words. The words are vehicles, the fuel is feeling. To affirm with emotion, to imagine with the sensation of it being real, is to plant a seed that cannot be denied. Feeling is the secret because it bridges the gap between thought and manifestation. Imagination creates the blueprint, but feeling energizes it and impresses it onto the subconscious. Without feeling, imagination is sterile. With feeling, imagination is fertile, alive, and unstoppable. When you consistently dwell in the feeling of already being, or having what you desire, reality itself bends to deliver the reflection of that inner state. The law of consciousness, you don't get what you want. You get what you are conscious of being. This principle overturns the common belief that desire alone has the power to change life. People often want many things: wealth, health, love, success. But their desires remain distant dreams because they continue to identify themselves with the opposite state. Consciousness is the foundation of reality, and what you are inwardly aware of being shapes the world you experience outwardly. To understand this law, imagine two people desiring wealth. The first continues to see himself as poor, constantly repeating, I want money, I need more, I hope something changes. The second shifts his inner awareness, saying to himself with conviction, I am prosperous, I live in abundance. I always have what I need. Though both desire wealth, only the second aligns his consciousness with the state of having it. In time, circumstances must reflect that inner shift, while the first remains trapped in a cycle of lack because his consciousness of poverty outweighs his desire for prosperity. This law explains why so many desires remain unfulfilled. Desire without a change in consciousness keeps the individual in the state of wanting, not having. Consciousness is not interested in words but in states. To be conscious of being something is to embody it inwardly, to assume it as your present reality, to feel it so vividly that the mind accepts it as true. Once that happens, the outer world reshapes itself to match the new state. Look at your own life as evidence. Every consistent identity you have claimed, whether it be student, parent, professional, or something else, was first accepted in consciousness before it appeared outwardly. You may not have realized it at the time, but the moment you inwardly agreed, "This is who I am," the world began mirroring that identity back to you. The outer labels and circumstances came after the inner agreement. Consciousness is always the cause. The world is always the effect. This is why people who try to change their circumstances without changing their consciousness find themselves frustrated. They may change jobs, move cities, or enter new relationships, yet the same patterns reappear because they carried the same consciousness with them. A person conscious of being unlucky will experience misfortune no matter where they go. A person conscious of being loved will attract affection even in the most unlikely settings. The law is impartial and unwavering. The power of this principle lies in its simplicity. To transform life, you do not need to fight circumstances or manipulate others. You need only shift your inner state of being. If you wish to experience health, become conscious of being healthy. Imagine the feeling of vitality. Act as though health is natural to you and dwell in that awareness until it feels real. If you wish for success, move beyond wanting it and assume the consciousness of one who is already successful. Carry yourself, think, and feel as though success belongs to you, and the world will echo that state. The law of consciousness also clarifies why fear and doubt are so destructive. To dwell in fear is to be conscious of failure before it arrives. The mind rehearses the state of defeat, and the world obediently reflects it. To dwell in doubt is to be conscious of lack, and so lack continues. The outer world cannot contradict the consciousness you sustain. That is why mastering inner awareness is the highest form of mastery, for it places you at the cause rather than the effect of life. You can observe this law in small, everyday situations. When you are conscious of being confident, people seem to respond to you with respect and openness. When you are conscious of being nervous, they react to your unease. When you are conscious of being fortunate, unexpected opportunities arise. Consciousness radiates beyond words, shaping your tone, your behavior, and even the energy others perceive in you. Without realizing it, you broadcast your inner state, and the world reflects it back. Some people argue that consciousness is too intangible to influence material reality, yet the evidence is everywhere. The inventions we now take for granted, airplanes, computers, medicine, were once only states of consciousness in the minds of their creators. Those visionaries became conscious of being pioneers, conscious of living in a world where such things existed, and eventually the outer world conformed. On a personal level, athletes who become conscious of being champions often achieve victories others deemed impossible. Not because of talent alone, but because their consciousness carried them to the outcome. The key to applying this law is persistence. Consciousness is not shifted by a fleeting thought or a momentary desire. It is shaped by what you consistently dwell upon, what you accept as true about yourself day after day. If you spend most of your time conscious of limitation, then occasional bursts of positive thinking cannot override that foundation. But if you deliberately assume a new state, return to it again and again, and feel it as real, the subconscious eventually accepts it, and manifestation follows naturally. The law of consciousness makes clear that you are not at the mercy of the world. You are not a victim of chance or circumstance, but the creator of your experience. The outer conditions may seem fixed, but they are only reflections of past states of consciousness. By shifting who you are conscious of being in the present, you alter the trajectory of your future. What appears solid and immovable must eventually yield to the persistence of a new inner state. You don't get what you want because wanting is a confession of lack. You get what you are conscious of being because consciousness is creative, causal, and magnetic. The world cannot resist reflecting back to you the identity you hold within. Every limitation, every success, every condition is a mirror of consciousness, and the power to change lies not in struggle, but in assumption. Change your mind, change your world to alter circumstances, shift your inner conversations, self-talk, and inner images, and the mirror of life must adjust accordingly. The experiences you encounter each day may appear to be caused by forces outside your control, but in truth, they are reflections of the mental atmosphere you maintain. Your world is not created by chance, but by the thoughts you repeat, the stories you tell yourself, and the pictures you hold in imagination. The moment you change these inner patterns, the outer conditions begin to transform, because life can only mirror what is impressed upon the mind. The dialogue you carry within yourself is more influential than the conversations you have with others. While outward speech may affect those around you, Inner speech shapes the very foundation of your reality. Every time you tell yourself, I can't, I'm not good enough, or nothing ever works out for me, you are planting seeds that will grow into experiences confirming those beliefs. These phrases may feel harmless, but they are creative acts, instructions to the subconscious mind that must be obeyed. On the other hand, when you deliberately replace negative self-talk with affirmations of strength, worthiness, and possibility, you program the subconscious with new instructions, and the mirror of life adjusts to reflect them. Inner images are equally powerful. The mind thinks in pictures, and those pictures become the blueprint of your experiences. When you constantly visualize yourself struggling, failing, or being rejected, you are rehearsing realities that eventually solidify into fact. But when you see yourself succeeding, being loved, or living in abundance, you are rehearsing new realities that will take form once sustained with persistence and feeling. The subconscious mind does not distinguish between imagination and physical experience. It accepts what you vividly and emotionally impress upon it. Imagine life as a stage play with you as both author and actor. The script is written in your inner conversations, the setting is drawn from your inner images, and the performance is directed by the feelings you attach to them. If the play is not to your liking, the answer is not to blame the stage or the other actors, but to rewrite the script within. By changing the way you think and speak inwardly, you shift the entire production, and the world responds with a new set of circumstances aligned with your revised role. Consider how quickly a change of mind alters perception. Two people may face the same situation, but one interprets it as a disaster while the other sees it as an opportunity. The difference lies not in the circumstance, but in the inner lens through which it is viewed. By adjusting that lens, by choosing empowering inner dialogue and uplifting images, you change the meaning of events, and in doing so, you change the way life unfolds. The same condition that once felt like an obstacle becomes the very path to growth, simply because the mind has shifted. The mirror analogy makes this truth plain. When you stand before a mirror and dislike the reflection, you do not attempt to fix the glass. You adjust yourself, and instantly the reflection changes. Life works in the same way. Complaining about outer conditions is as futile as shouting at a mirror. The reflection is not the cause, but the effect. If you want a brighter reflection, you must brighten your inner state. Change your thoughts, alter your self-talk, and create new inner pictures, and the mirror of life will have no choice but to echo those changes. This principle explains why people who maintain negative inner conversations often find themselves trapped in cycles of frustration. They rehearse defeat in their minds, imagine rejection before it happens, and speak to themselves in tones of discouragement. The subconscious, faithful and neutral, accepts these impressions and brings forth conditions to match. The individual then points to the evidence and says, "See, I was right," without realizing that the evidence was created by the very inner dialogue that preceded it. Breaking the cycle requires a deliberate effort to change the inner story, to replace self-defeating conversations with words of faith, hope, and achievement. Shifting inner conversations is not about denying reality, but about creating a new one. You may face challenges, but the way you speak to yourself about them determines whether they shrink or expand. Telling yourself, "This is impossible," guarantees defeat. Telling yourself, "I will find a way," opens doors that were previously invisible. The difference is subtle but powerful, for it moves you from a state of limitation to a state of possibility. Your world cannot resist a sustained change of mind. The moment you persistently feed your subconscious with images of success, health, love, and abundance, the mirror of life begins to adjust. People who once overlooked you suddenly take notice. Opportunities that seemed out of reach appear unexpectedly. Situations that once drained you dissolve, replaced by ones that uplift and inspire. This is not coincidence, but the inevitable result of aligning inner speech and imagery with the outcomes you desire. The challenge lies in consistency. A fleeting positive thought cannot overturn years of negative self-talk. Just as a plant requires regular watering to grow, the new inner story must be nurtured daily until it becomes natural. At first, it may feel artificial to affirm success when failure appears all around you, but persistence transforms the artificial into the authentic. The subconscious does not resist repeated impressions. It eventually yields to them, and when it does, the reflection in the mirror of life must shift. Changing your mind is not a one-time act, but a continual process of choosing your inner state. Each thought, each self-directed phrase, each image you dwell upon contributes to the overall atmosphere of consciousness. That atmosphere is the cause of your experience, and it is always within your power to adjust it. By guarding your inner conversations, by watching the images you entertain, and by deliberately choosing to dwell on what uplifts rather than what diminishes, you take command of the law of reflection. The world then becomes not a place of random chaos, but a faithful mirror of the mind you cultivate. So I leave you with this truth: the world around you is your mind turned inside out. Guard your imagination. Nurture your assumptions, feel your desires as real, and you will discover that the mirror universe of your mind is not a dream, but the most powerful reality there is. Thank you.